This weekend, a massive gathering of Christians across California reportedly broke a record by hosting the world's largest ever baptism event. The event, known as Baptized California, took place on Saturday and Sunday across various locations in the Golden State, culminating in a historic number of baptisms at individual churches and a main event at Huntington Beach.
So on May 19th, you are holding Baptize California. Tell us a little bit about this event.
Yeah, we're so excited. We are uniting the Church of California, kind of from San Diego all the way up to Eureka. We're going to be hosting it this year, unlike last year, not just at kind of regional locations, but at local churches all throughout the state. So there'll be hundreds of hosting churches. We have some of the largest churches in the state, from Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, Charismatic, everyone kind of in between that'll be hosting these locations. And then we'll have, it's really cool. We've been finding out we have a regional event in San Francisco, right next to the Golden Gate Bridge. There'll be dozens of churches united together doing a baptism there. LA County has a couple set up, one right by Redondo Beach, and the flagship will actually be in Huntington Beach. And there's one actually in North San Diego County as well. They'll be doing a regional event, but we're expecting somewhere between 10, 20,000, 25,000 people at Huntington Beach. And Huntington is going to be Saturday the 18th and Sunday the 19th. Saturday night's going to be an evangelistic worship night. We have Martin Smith from Delirious, Circuit Riders, a lot of Bodie from The Voice. We have a bunch of other artists coming in, and it's going to be really special. So that'll be Saturday and Sunday, and then basically from 3:30 to 7:30 both nights. It's going to just go crazy, and local churches will be hosting it all throughout the state on the 19th.
Baptized California was a 2-day celebration of faith featuring speakers, worship music from leaders like Cian Fred, and numerous stories of life change and spiritual renewal. The event saw over 6,000 people baptized at Huntington Beach alone, with additional 6,000 individuals immersed in churches throughout the state, according to preliminary numbers. Pastor Franzi, the founder of the event, shared his excitement and amazement with CBN News on Monday. "You can smell another great awakening in the air like rain before it hits," he said. "God led a march yesterday. If God can do this in the church in California, it can, and it will happen in the rest of America."
That's incredible. So the 19th is the big day, but it's a whole weekend of events. Take us through a little bit, because this is something you've been working on for a while. Obviously, last year, Baptized SoCal, which was history making. I mean, really incredible. Talk about the roots of what made you say, hey, I want to host these mass baptisms.
Well, I'll be honest, I was super reluctant. I'm a church planner. Our church was literally just 3 years old. I'm kind of the new guy. Moved to California from Boise, Idaho. I'm originally from California, but spent the last 17 years in a different state. So moving here, starting a brand new church, treading the water after COVID, the last thing on our mind was uniting some, movement of churches in global, this global baptism initiative. But I was reading a book and couldn't tell you what it was called at this point. It's a little fog in my memory, but it talked about the largest water baptism in American history. I was surprised because it was actually in the 90s. It wasn't in the 70s or the 60s. It was after a large music festival in the early 90s. The LA Times did a piece on it. You could go look it up if you want. But they said there was thousands that came to Pirates Cove. Also caught my interest because that's our backyard here from where I live in Orange County. And it said that day there was like nearly 3,000 that got baptized. They recorded it as one of the largest baptisms in American history. And when I read it, I just felt like I had almost like an open vision. I saw boats from guys I knew in our church parked along Pirates Cove. I saw that beautiful house on the corner there with like leading worship from that balcony. Kind of saw a picture of what we would do a year and a half later. So told our church about it a couple weeks later, and our board, everyone was excited about it. And God told us to organize and to fund this baptism Again, I tried to talk God out of it. I'm like, there's a lot of other guys here, fathers, mothers here that are doing great things. I'm a nobody. And like Moses, God was like, I'm not answering your insecurity question. I just want you to go do this. I'll be with you. So we organized it. We paid for it. And to our surprise, that summer, which would have been about 6 months after God told us to do it, we find out there's a movie coming out called The Jesus Revolution, which thank you, Pastor Greg Laurie, for your life, your ministry, all you've done for our region. And I just felt like it was God, that's the sovereignty of God, kind of propping up a hunger for water baptism, specifically at Pirates Cove, basically a year before we did it. So it was kind of a right place, right time, right people scenario. And when Pentecost Sunday hit that following year in 2023, we saw almost 4,200 people get baptized in one day. It took us almost 5 or 6 hours to baptize all those people, and it was just a really special day.
That's
Francis, the pastor of Oceans Church in California, gained national attention last year when he hosted Baptized Soccer. That event attracted thousands of spectators and resulted in nearly 4,200 baptisms, which are reportedly the largest recorded baptism in U.S. history at the time. However, that record was soon surpassed a few weeks later when Pastor Greg Laurie hosted a similar event, witnessing over 4,500 baptisms. For Francis, Baptized Soccer was just the beginning. He had been planning Baptized California as a follow-up event that would involve the entire state, hoping to see God work in an incredible way. Based on the initial projection, his efforts were immensely successful. My wife, Rachel, and I could hardly sleep thinking about how God could be so kind to let us be a part of the largest baptism in the history of America, Francis said, expressing his elation over the event's outcome. We are proof that God really can use anybody. This year's event was truly massive, with Francis crediting God for bringing it all together. It was a surreal and extraordinary day, he told CBN News. It felt like we were living in the pages of the book of Acts. The individual stories coming from Baptized California were indeed remarkable. Francis shared one such story about Satanists who accepted Jesus and was immediately baptized. You could see the change immediately, he said. At Andy Beach, 1,000 people accepted Jesus, with thousands more coming to watch the event unfold. The crowd swelled to as many as 14,000 people at one point, with hundreds of churches joining forces to make the event a success.
incredible. And, we covered that quite a bit at CBN and found it to be very powerful. Talked to you about it at the time last year. But I want to go back to that vision that you had, because I think it's so powerful. The timeline you just outlined, that you had that vision. You had no idea these other things were going on, surrounding Jesus Revolution. And is that for you a common spiritual experience, that you get a message from God that way? Was this uncommon for you? I'm just kind of curious about that, because that's pretty powerful to hear.
I had a vivid dream for our church and kind of gave us the name of our church, which is Oceans Church, and the mandate of our church that He give us favor in coastal cities and port cities around the world, and that we'd have eventually a major oceans campus at every major ocean in the world. So I had a vivid dream that was like probably one of the greatest encounters I've ever had with God in my sleep. Had one of those. I've had probably 3 or 4 significant dreams in my life. That would have been the crown jewel. But as far as visions go, like this, I've had maybe on one hand type of scenarios that'd be similar, but nothing on this level. And I felt like there was a phase one when I saw the vision. It was Pirates Cove. I heard SoCal, and then I heard California, and then I heard America. And it's almost like God speaking as a father. And he said, son, if I could do this in Southern California, do you think I could do it in all of California? To which I responded, yes. And then he said, do you think if I can do it in California, I could do it in Texas or Tennessee or another state in America? And I said, yes. And then he said, then I want you to believe that what happens in California will sweep into the rest of America. And then he just took it even further, which again, I'm just a normal guy. I'm like, this is all outside of my reach. And he said, if I could do it in America, do you think I could do it in other nations? And I said,
Oh, wow.
yes. Then he said, I want you to then, by faith, I want you to go buy the domain for Baptize Africa, Baptize Asia, Baptize Europe. And so I bought all the domains to every state, Baptize Idaho, Baptize Washington, Baptize Hawaii. So we did all this in faith before we even did Baptize SoCal. And God started giving me a revelation after that vision of basically how God has always historically set the stage for a great move of God with a water baptism movement. And he showed me that in the Old Testament, before the children of Israel inherited the promised land, they crossed over the Red Sea. And it was a type of baptism in the Old Testament, like circumcision was a type of baptism in the Old Testament. He showed me that John the Baptist, before Jesus came to the earth, it was a message of turning to God, repentance, and water baptism. And before Jesus came the first time to the earth, he came with a messenger named John the Baptist that had a message of baptism before the earth was ready for Jesus to come the first time. You read Matthew 28, excuse me, and Jesus says, all authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Go therefore, make disciples of all nations. And he goes on and puts this little clause in there, baptizing them. And I think there's something about national revival that could be connected to a water baptism movement. So God began to speak to me and he just said, Mark, could it be that if I came the first time to the earth on the heels of a water baptism movement, that it could be, Matthew 28, a global baptism movement that prepares the earth for the second coming of Jesus Christ? Again, this could be a little bit out there, maybe too audacious, but I just started to say, God, I believe you. And so we just started taking action steps, and to see the hand of God, the fingerprints of God, uniting churches, denominations, never worked together, never really talked together. And, the prayer of Jesus in John 17 was, make them one. That was his prayer. Unity was the prayer of Jesus to the Father, as we are one. And I think about, what is it in all of Christendom that we all agree on? Well, we agree on an empty tomb. We agree on a virgin birth, but we agree on this idea that water baptism is good. We identify in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So for us, kind of looking at all this, we were thinking about, man, God, it's unity around baptism that could really get the church to work together. So if it's unity that God wants, maybe it's baptism, the vehicle, being the vehicle of what could bring about that unity that God desires.
Baptize California and his predecessor, Baptize SoCal, began with a vision from God. Francis explained his church was only 3 years old when he embarked on the ambitious Baptize SoCal event last May. At the time, he wasn't planning such an endeavor. He had recently moved back to California after spending 17 years in another state and starting a new church while navigating the challenges of COVID-19 made the idea of organizing a global baptism initiative seem daunting. However, after reading a book about one of the largest water baptisms in American history held at Pirates Cove in California during the 1990s, Francis felt inspired. He had assumed the mass immersion took place much earlier and was intrigued by its location, where the late Jack Smith had baptized masses of young people during the Jesus movement 50 years ago. All these themes and ideas coalesced into a vivid vision from God that changed everything for Francis. I had almost like an open vision, he said, describing the experience. He saw boats from its church members parked along Pirates Cove. Although he wasn't prone to such visions, he shared it with his church a few weeks later, and people got excited. This prompted him to organize and fund Baptized Soccer despite initial reluctance. Franz admitted he tried to talk God out of it, feeling insecure about his law. However, he ultimately decided to listen to God's call. Remarkably, this vision came before the Asbury University revival and before he learned about Jesus' liberation, a feature film about Lawless life and Jesus movement. The movie, which grossed over $52 million, sparked mass interest and spiritual fervor across the nation. With Baptized California's success, Francis is already looking ahead to his next ambitious project, Baptized America. He aims to unite churches across the country for a nationwide baptism event on June 8th next year. This is Stephen, GC News.